Hey everyone, it's me, Julie, here to do another writing tip video for you. But before we get started, if you could do me a huge favor and hit that subscribe link at the bottom of the video and also like the video, that would be big for me. It would also be, you would be also doing yourself a favor because you would know when these videos are uploaded and you'd be able to see my smiling face. So without further ado, here we go. Just a joke. Here we go. Today, we're going to talk about opening up your novel. Last time we talked about novel writing as a whole, why to write novels in the first place, where to begin, why we write them, how we write them, this, that, and the other thing. Today we're going to talk about the starting point, the opening, which in my opinion, the first sentence is the hardest sentence, the hardest one to write. It's the hardest. The whole first paragraph is my hardest thing to do. You might find it the same thing. Some people find the ending the hardest. I find the beginning the most difficult. So I'm going to give you some tips about the beginning today. So you have your idea, you're ready to write your novel. Remember these tips and you'll do just fine. I'm going to just do these in numerical order. Won't take much of your time. Number one, remember that your opening is the entryway into your novel. If you can remember that, writing these first sentence or two, if you just think of it as the entryway into your novel, like the entryway into your house. If you walk into somebody's house and it's just a complete disaster, a complete mess, there's laundry everywhere, there's dirt everywhere, there's, I don't know, an old pizza on the sofa cushion, I don't know, whatever. You're not going to want to stay there, are you? But if you walk into somebody's house and it's really nice and it smells like there's been dinner cooking all day, it's really clean, there's a couple candles burning, the atmosphere is just right, yeah, I want to stay there, and you probably would also. Think of your book the same way. You're inviting somebody into your novel, you want to make them go in further than just the front door. So, with that in mind, you'll want to start off with a bang. Now this can be tricky. You have to do this depending on the genre that you write, the genre that you're interested in. I write horror, so I start off with a bang that's usually kind of exactly that. Wham! It's usually something pretty freaky. But if you write children's books, or if you write young adult books, or romance books, that your bang, or whatever you make, whatever terminology, whatever word you might call it, could be completely different than mine, but it'll have the same result. You want it to be a strong opening that pulls somebody into your novel. And you can do that if you know your audience. Knowing that, your first line needs to be compelling. I always make sure, and I'm going to ask you, or tell you that it's important, to try to make sure that you want to make your readers ask the 5 W's. I actually call it the 5 W's and the 1 H. Everybody I think knows what the 5 W's are. The who, what, when, where, why. We've been taught that all through grade school, our whole lives. Those are the questions. I also throw how in there because how is part of that puzzle for me also. They need to figure out how. I mean, all the other questions are important too, but how is just as important. So I call it the 5 W's and the how. If you can try to have your readers ask all those questions in the first sentence or two, you're golden. They're going to read. They're going to continue to read. You're going to pull them in. Next, your opening line should be vivid. By vivid, I mean give them a good, decent picture of something, but not too much. I like to tease my readers, give them a good picture, but just enough of something that they're like, what? Come on, I need more. So they don't just want more, they need more. So a good picture, but not too much. I'll tell you what I mean by that. I'm going to use an example of my own novel, my first book, Blood Type. I'm going to read the opening for you, and you'll know exactly what I mean by this, because if you haven't read this book, and I read this to you now, you're gonna have questions. If you're planning on reading this book, I don't want to spoil anything for you. You are going to hear the first paragraph right now, so you might want to fast forward the video right now, or pause or whatever you need to do. But here goes. The very first sentence reads, Carissa was all that was displayed on the page when Old Lady Parrish returned to her desk from her shower. That was the first sentence. Doesn't really tell you much. The lady came out of the shower, got to her desk, saw a piece of paper with the name Carissa typed on it. The rest of the paragraph, which isn't real long, reads, she could only stare at the single sheet of white paper protruding from the top of the typewriter as her eyes burned and filled with tears. Her hands quickly moved to cover her mouth as she gasped and shook as her body was completely stricken with terror. Completely stricken with terror. That's where the first paragraph ends. Of course you want to go on and read more of that. So, if you have the book, awesome. If you don't have it and you want to hear more of that, you need to get it. Anyway, that was the opening of Blood Type. I think I successfully made my readers ask all of those questions right in the first paragraph. The opening line, starting with the bang thing, I think a little bit better than my example. I'm going to use a really old one. I have another example, the Amityville Horror. I don't know how many of you have actually read this book. Everybody, everybody has seen the movies, the documentaries, you've heard the stories, but it's supposed to be a true story, so we all have heard this, that, and the other thing about the Amityville Horror. But if you haven't read the book and you like the story and it creeps you out and you like to be creeped out, I highly, highly, highly recommend this book. Because it is, don't read it alone at night. That's all I'm going to say. But the first paragraph, which is only 2 sentences long, of the Amityville Horror reads, December 18th, 1975. That's just the date at the top because it's a true story. So true stories are usually dated. The first paragraph reads, George and Kathy Lutz moved into 112 Ocean Avenue on December 18th. 28 days later, they fled in terror. That's it. That's all he gives you. Jay Anson, the person who wrote this book, is very good at leaving cliffhangers just like that one in that first paragraph along the way. All the paragraphs, all the ends of the chapters, they all give you little snippets that make you want to continue on to the next and read on for more. And when he wrote this, he was wanted to be recognized too. Of course, people were going to know the story. They were going to recognize the Amityville Horror, but no one knew who he was. So he had to do that. So, but I highly recommend this book. Because that's a great example of one that really gets your attention right in the beginning. So far we said, number one, remember your opening line needs to be, because it is the entryway into your novel, start with a bang, know your audience, and I hope all of you do. Secondly, the first line should be compelling. Make the reader ask the 5 questions. Well, the 6 questions, the 5 W's and the H, because you want to pull them in, and those questions are going to be what pulls them in every time, without a doubt. And do not forget to make your opening lines vivid. Give them a good picture. They need to be able to picture something in their head. You need to put them in the scene. If they don't feel like they're in the scene, they might not continue. So you need to place them in the scene, but don't give them too much. Make them need to go on in your first couple of sentences. Now, the last tip I'm going to talk about today is the opening paragraph as a whole. There are certain writers, by certain writers I mean famous writers, who don't need to hook you in the first line because you're going to read their stuff regardless because they're famous. I'm not going to lie. I'm Julie Kent. I'm not famous. Most people don't even know who I am. So I need to hook people with my first line, or at least my first 2 lines. That's how I sold, books so far. I think I successfully did that. The example I'm using next is from the Master, however. He does not have to drop a bomb in the first sentence because we know he's Stephen King and we know that his book is going to be amazing. Well, if you're a King fan, not everybody is. I am a diehard Stephen King fan, so I find everything that he writes amazing. I have all of his books on hardback, and I'm going to use this one as an example because this is one he co-wrote with his son, Owen, and I'm going to brag for a second because I actually got to go see them speak about this book, and they did a question and answer session and everything at this college way up north, and it was amazing. However, don't laugh, I was too scared to ask a question, even though I had the opportunity to ask my idol a question about his writing and his writing process. I chickened out, but I was completely in awe at being in the same room as Stephen King because it was one of the most amazing experiences of my life. So I've crossed that off my bucket list, and because we were there, I actually got an autographed copy, which I'm going to show you. The book is autographed by both Stephen King and his son. I hope you can see that. And because we got this autographed copy, I have 2 copies of this book. The one that is not autographed is the one I read because I didn't want to mess up the pages by turning the pages and reading the book, the one that was autographed, because I have a bazillion books by Stephen King, but this is the only one that I have that's autographed. Unfortunately, this is the only opportunity I had to get one autographed. So hopefully in my lifetime or his, I will get that opportunity again. But now I'm going to read you the first paragraph of this book so that you know what I mean about setting the scene. The first paragraph, you need to begin with an interesting character or an interesting scene. Still put your readers into this scene. Make it interesting. Make them want to read more. And also, I do it too, and introduce my main characters in the first paragraph, which is what he does here. Ray asked Jeanette if she had ever watched the square from the light of the window. Jeanette said she didn't. Ray was in the top bunk, Jeanette in the bottom. They were both waiting for the cells to unlock for breakfast. It was another morning. So right away, you know that these 2 women, Ray and Jeanette, are in prison, a woman's prison, because where else are you going to be waiting for cells to unlock so that you can have breakfast? You know they're in prison, and I know from reading this book that they are 2 of the main characters in this book. Now, Stephen King is very good at writing books with many, many characters in them. So there are a lot of other characters in the book. However, these 2 are a couple of the main ones. And he also introduces the prison in the first paragraph, which is also a big part of the story. So that was well done, introducing that stuff in the first paragraph. So I'm going to run down the tips. That wraps up the tips that I'm going to give you. I'm going to run down real quick one more time. If you can just remember these, and then I'll be leaving you. Number 1, opening lines. Remember, it's the entryway into your novel. Start off with a bang. Know your audience. And it is your hook. Remember, you're hooking them in. Remember, number 2, your first line needs to be compelling. Make your readers ask the 5 W's and the H, and they will definitely want to read further into your story. Remember, this part, you're really pulling them in. Number 3, make your opening line vivid, especially your first sentence right here. Make it vivid. Give them a good picture, but not too much. You just want to tease them just a little bit so that they want to go further into your novel, further into your book. Read to the next paragraph and the next paragraph. And I used my blood type example for that. But make them need more. It's not a want anymore. It's no longer a want. It's a need. They have to read. And number 4, the entire first paragraph needs to begin with an interesting scene as a whole, or or interesting or main character or characters, or a combination of the two. Like with the Stephen King book, he put the scene, the prison and the characters in there. Didn't really say what they were doing, you know, other than waiting for breakfast. But we need to read to find that out. So those are all the tips I have for you today. Thank you for watching, and once again, I'm going to remind you to please hit the subscribe link at the bottom of the video and like the video. And I'm also going to ask you to please leave any comments or any questions, or any questions you have for me, any questions about the video or this video or any videos I put on here, any questions about any of my books, any questions about writings, or if you just want to let me know what you want me to talk about, we can just chat. Please just drop me a line, write it in my comments, and I will do a video for you. Talk about whatever you want to talk about. But for now, we are done. Have a great night, and I'm out. Thank you for watching.